After a day off at the start of the week for a bank holiday, we've had 4 days to make progress on the work on the walls on the front and the side, which should give the outside of the house some slightly different and better looks, and should create a very exciting new view from the inside. But making changes to old stone walls that often aren't in the best condition can be a bit tricky and very uncertain. So the team are going to need to lean on all of their experience and work very steadily and very carefully. And on the first morning, I needed to be careful when opening up the house because it was still pretty dark, especially inside. And once I had opened up the house, I could get on with water duties by powering up the borehole pump and refilling the deposit. And when the team arrived, they got set up for work on the beams on the new opening, with Photo getting ready the mortar that they would be needing. While Miguel and Haggy started their prep work on the beams, Photo and I started work on sorting the stones that we had dropped beneath the cube structure when we started taking it down last week. After their initial prep work on the beams, the team were ready to fix them in place with mortar. So Photo returned to mortar mixing and I returned to the stone clearing. After the mid-morning break, I was very happy to have Rex back on site to help, and he kindly took over responsibility for clearing around the scaffolding bases and separating and sorting the stones from the overall rubble so that we can reuse them in the coming days. And with the team and Rex getting on with things, I returned to the trees to break up and tidy up more of the branches I had cut down. And after an hour or so, I was back to the house to check on progress with the stones clearing and beam fixing. With the beams in place and the space above them filled in, Haggy and Miguel could move on to the next task of starting to clear the wall so that they could get more props in place and then start work on strengthening the edges. We are purposefully making the new opening between the outer edges of the original windows partly to utilise the existing integration and strength of the edges. But now we needed to take out the old window frames and bars. While the guys continued their work on the wall, Rex finished up for the day, having done a very good job of tidying up the space below the cube. And with sections of the front wall coming out, there would be plenty more stone sorting and rubble clearing coming up. Having cleared down to the ground, the team could now start putting in full-length props in the middle section and get ready for starting work on rebuilding the edges. And towards the end of the day, we had to start thinking about the temporary covers we now needed for the new opening. The next day was slightly brighter, and thankfully, from a sound perspective, there was slightly less wind. And once on site, the team got back into their work, and for a morning warm-up, I started some rubble shifting. With both sides now opened up, we could fully prop the middle section. And during the mid-morning break, we reviewed progress with Enric the boss, and I was happy to welcome a channel follower to the house. With the team carrying on with their work on the edges, I started clearing old plaster from the cube structure. For the start of work by Miguel on repairing the wall and filling the openings, which would require some other preparation that afternoon. Initially securing the stones and space beneath the opening, and then organising stones upstairs that could be used for this wall work. While Haggy continued with work on the edges of the front wall opening. Having sorted various stones, I was on my way downstairs when I noticed a curious light in one of the rooms that I hadn't seen before. Back downstairs, Haggy was finishing the first of the edges, and there was some tidying up for the end of the day. The next day, my opening up work involved some additional tasks due to the new opening and its temporary covers. But when the team arrived, they were back into their tasks on the front and side walls. The technical architect was back on site, and after discussing the work with him, I was back to following the progress and helping with lining up stones and some mortar lifting. After the mid-morning break, I went back to tidying up more of the branches, close enough to the cube structure to be called back when help was required. For the rest of the afternoon, I followed progress on the two work areas as Haggy and Miguel both steadily worked their way to the tops of their walls. On the last day, I arrived a little earlier than usual to make sure the house was opened up and ready for the team, both downstairs and upstairs. Miguel and Fodo arrived first and started work at the side of the house. I did some clearing up at the front. And then Haggy arrived with some materials, which led to a bit of tidying up and rearranging of the work area. And with the work area cleared and materials unloaded, work restarted at the side and at the front. And in between mortar and stonework, photos started the breakup by hand of an old bag of cement that we had at last uncovered.
Per estar informat al ridauga.com. Per saber què passa al ridauga.com.
For the final part of the day, I returned to the top of the cube to take down a few more levels of stone so that next week we can more easily fill in the lower of the two openings. And afterwards, I followed the final progress for the week on the two walls.
Cuando viene aquí porque mira.
And that is the end of work for this week, where the team have worked carefully and steadily on the walls on this corner of the house and done a little bit of tidying up in this area. And in the last 2 days, they have been carefully filling in the opening of the old cube structure on both sides. And then today we've done a little bit more work lowering the walls of the cube structure. But the much bigger change has been on this side of the house and all of the work on the new opening here, which at the start of the week, the team worked on fixing the beams in place. Then they worked on strengthening the edges. And then today, Hagi has been taking out the remnants of the wall here to open it up for the first time, although we've now closed it off for the weekend. And next week, we will continue work on both walls, hopefully removing the last part of the cube structure around the corner and giving more of a stone finish to more of the front wall. So please do tune in next week to see how we get on.